A few days ago, I released a short video on what I thought was the ideal president, and it got a lot of good reviews and good attention for me. The reason I made it clear was I'm seeing people, the media and voters, not think through why they like the candidates. I'm looking at all the polls, and despite Donald Trump being indicted, he's still leading the polls, and DeSantis is a far second place. Now, I know it's a bit early to count on the polls, and it's not to say DeSantis is the best choice, but a lot of conservatives, moderate Republicans, would seem to want DeSantis. Now, I personally, even though I'm the best choice, if I had to pick a second choice, I'd probably pick Vivek to be president, but I think still the best would be me. But despite that, I realize people don't really think about what they want the president to be. They like Donald Trump because he's a fighter. They like Vivek because he's anti-woke. They like DeSantis because he's smart. He served in the he served in the armed forces. He took he did a great job as governor during COVID, whereas most other governors failed. People don't know why they like Biden, but they'll vote for Biden because he seems comfortable. People seem to be liking RFK Jr. I've seen some polls where he's 20% in the Democratic primaries. It's pretty wild, huh? Someone that is advocating for freedom from vaccine mandates, which I would support. But he's definitely not an advocate of freedom across the board. He wants to control the landscape the way he thinks is the right way. So I thought I want to spend a little more time reading through what I wrote about the ideal president and my thoughts on why I would be the right ideal. So what I wrote before Independence Day this year is that the ideal president is a rational human being who confidently uses his mind to integrate facts towards building a long-term vision for America and executing it, rather than relying on his emotions and faith. Now, before I keep reading on, I have a lot more details on my website. So if you want to drill down a bit more into some of these policies, feel free or leave comments and I will spend more time in a future video to explain. The ideal president respects individual liberties and would not force Americans to sacrifice his own life for the country or for others. Here, I mean life, both life and death life, and just your life in general. Your life is yours. No, it doesn't belong to anyone else. The ideal president is inspired by the Declaration of Independence and upholds the U.S. Constitution. You would think this is a no-brainer, but don't be surprised, as many politicians, presidents claim to do the same, but they're willing to violate it anytime for votes. The ideal president loves life and strives to instill a life-affirming and risk-taking culture while actively suffocating nihilism and complacency. And what do I mean by that? It's really the spirit of America, risk-taking with some reason. You're thinking through. I don't mean diving off a cliff, but risk-taking culture, life-affirming culture. Life is not safe. Nature is not safe. You know there's risks in every decision you make, and you make a calculated risk as you make these decisions. And why do I say suffocate nihilism? Because it's become so prevalent in our culture, and it scares me. The ideal president recognizes that people do not serve him, nor he serve the people. He is responsible for defending their liberties. And I mean this somewhat metaphorically. Of course, the office serves the people, but serves in the sense that you are defending individual liberties. That is what you're that is what service to the people mean. It doesn't mean like a waiter serving the customer for every whim. The ideal president believes in unequivocal justice in both legal and social environments. If this means justice to me, if you commit a crime, you need to serve justice. If you do something great, justice would be your reward in society, winning praise, winning love, and potentially economic rewards. The ideal president is principled in action and thought. This to me means really that the president is predictable because he is principled, or she. We can go into that later. The ideal president is honest. Is that so hard? I guess it is. The ideal president understands that freedom can easily be taken away and thus fights hard to secure it indefinitely. This is also gravely missing, both in our current group of politicians and a lot of the voters. I mean, a lot of the young voters don't realize how short we've had freedom in human history. It's a very short time. And look around, there's many societies, countries that don't have freedom, that don't even have some of the basic freedoms we have. And that should tell people how delicate having freedom is. And it can easily be taken away because of war, because of an authoritarian president, because of a global recession or a local recession. Freedom can be taken away. Think about COVID. I want this president to be my president. And I know this president won't make my life easier. And to me, it's like having that personal trainer. That personal trainer is not going to tell you to not eat McDonald's every day. Oh, you can eat McDonald's every day, but you also need to work, exercise really hard to lose weight. No, the personal trainer is going to tell you things you need to hear if he's a rational or she's a rational trainer. In fact, he will challenge me by taking away those comforts that I didn't deserve. He will challenge me by forcing me to think and map out the kind of life I want to live, the kind of human being I want to be, and then execute on that plan myself. He will tell me truths that I ignored and didn't want to acknowledge. As difficult as this may be, I know this is good for me and good for the people I care about. Again, I think the best analogy is a personal trainer. So if you're trying to lose weight, you want someone to give you an honest assessment of where you are now and what you need to do. And you need to understand it's not easy to execute on that, to make a plan and to then execute that plan. How hard is it to stop eating McDonald's if you've had it for 10 years straight? It's hard for me to not only eat McDonald's once a year. It takes a lot of willpower. And we don't have this president now and unlikely to have one soon unless we do something about it, unless you guys vote for me. That is why I'm running for president. And I'm trying to be honest here. I don't wholly possess all of these traits, but I will passionately endeavor to embody this ideal president. And I hope a majority of you also want this type of president. For all my life, and likely for all of my parents' lives, America has been led by power lusting men determined to control our lives for the greater good. What's the greater good? You can't sum up everyone's desires and dreams and combine it into one good. and then expect a Democrat or Republican president to have all the right levers, tweak the right levers to get everyone what they want. It's not the president's role, but yet we've been expecting that. Democrat and Republican presidents have sent young men and women to fight and die for senseless wars. We should take this more seriously that our presidents have done this and we've allowed them to do this. And what's the worst that they get? Get voted out? Actually, both presidents in my lifetime that have, with all three presidents in my lifetime that have got us into wars, senseless wars, actually got a second term. Democrat and Republican presidents have violated and taken individual freedoms on opposing voting groups. You have a Republican president, then they target certain regulations, executive orders that hurts the opposing group. And not thinking about Americans as individuals for everyone. Democrat and Republican presidents have waged meaningless cultural fights in order to avoid addressing the root causes of social unrest and malaise. That is what I'm seeing for most of my recent lives. We're fighting about transgenderism, what books can or cannot be shown in public school libraries, which beer we should be boycotting. These are distractions from what's really important. And we're allowing our politicians to distract us. Despite all their efforts to suppress creative and vibrant individuals, the American people continue to overcome these obstacles and live great lives. This is especially apparent when we see many other countries and societies head in the opposing direction, often willingly. So I'm not totally negative about America because despite all these issues, wow, we have some great people still making their life great and fun, making their families' lives great, sending kids to college, helping their parents retire. I don't mean just great Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. I'm even talking about middle class mom and dads and young kids that are trying to get that first job out of high school. We're still fighting because we can't explain why, but they know it's right to keep living despite all these hurdles behind them. But they don't realize where these hurdles are coming from. I selfishly want to live in a thriving and free America. I want to be surrounded by more artists and entrepreneurs, farmers and teachers, space travelers. It's my personal dream. Tunnelers, and it's a little ode to the Boring Company. Food truck owners, love to eat, and construction workers, because I want to get a new house, who are all enthusiastically trying to live their best life possible and have little time to be bothered with politics, especially the politicians. Why are we spending so much time on politics? Because politics have overwhelmingly dominated our lives. And we think we need more politics to correct it. But we don't correct it by removing policies. We try to correct it by adding more policies, and just makes it worse. I especially don't need politicians to be more involved in politics. Defend the Constitution. See how you're defend the Constitution, manage your state, manage your city, your district, and go live your best life. Don't be too political. I want a society that is not afraid of bringing kids into this world. I want our enemies destroyed so that they cannot take this life from me or distract me from enjoying this life. This last part goes back to justice. Another reason why we have such malaise is because we have so many foreign enemies, but we're unwilling to call them out. And even if we call them out, we're unwilling to have a strategic plan around getting rid of them. And I'll have to dedicate more time on foreign policy, but it's not as sexy for most voters. And that's unfortunate. It's complicated. But when we talk about foreign policy, mostly it's around Ukraine. We support him or don't support him. It's very simplistic. We don't think about it holistically. But I think this is a black swan item that I want to talk more about as my campaign keeps going. And I want this same life for my family and for those I care about. This life is worth fighting for, and as President of the United States, I will willingly take on this challenge to reverse the course of our nation and redirect it towards freedom, prosperity, and happiness. If you share my vision, please support my campaign. Yes, I definitely could use your support. I want your support because it's going to be good for your life. It's going to be good for the lives of the people you care about. And if you're one of those economists, I like to look at the greater good or look at GDP measurements, which you shouldn't necessarily. Again, your life is your life. But I can guarantee you my life will be better with my policies, and your neighbor's life will be better with my policies. Because ultimately, I'm advocating for a lot more freedom for you to live your life as you see fit. And like I said before, like a personal trainer, it's not going to be easy in the beginning, but I'm telling you what the future is going to look like. And so, life is worth living for and worth fighting for. So you'll take that short-term pain because in a few years, your life will be much better. And you'll know a generation from now, 2 generations from now, that path will lead to a better life for your kids or your friends' kids or your grandparents, your grandkids. That's why I want to run for president. And that's my view of the ideal president.